I was about to attend my husband Derek's funeral when a strange letter arrived with just 2 words: "Don't go." My hands shook as I held it outside our house, the morning sunlight doing nothing to warm the cold pit growing in my stomach. Before we dive into the story, I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'm always curious to see how far these stories reach. Now let's get into it. I had no idea who could have sent it, but the handwriting was familiar, unmistakably Marin's. My sister. The thought made my chest tighten. Derek had been gone for barely 24 hours, and already the world felt wrong, distorted, like a half-remembered nightmare I couldn't wake from. I stared at the envelope, my mind racing. Why would Marin warn me? Or was it a trap? The words echoed in my head as I gripped the letter tighter. Every memory of our childhood flashed by, the sister I thought I knew, the confidant I trusted, now tangled in suspicion. Grief clawed at me, but so did a flicker of dread, an instinct telling me something sinister was unfolding beyond my awareness. I glanced at Ava and Jude, my children, still sleepy-eyed and oblivious to the storm breaking around us. Their small hands reaching for breakfast reminded me why I couldn't ignore the warning. Slowly I slid the envelope open and my heart sank further. Inside was a note, a single sentence that changed everything: "She's not alone." My stomach dropped and my mind screamed questions I couldn't yet answer. Marin, what had you done? Who else was involved? I felt tears blur my vision as I weighed my next move. The funeral loomed, an expected goodbye to the man I loved, but the letter whispered danger, betrayal, a secret waiting to be unearthed. The world outside my window seemed suddenly colder, distant, and untrustworthy. Anxiety twisted inside me as I realized I couldn't trust even the people I thought I loved most. Derek deserved my farewell, but my instincts screamed that if I went, I might uncover a truth that would shatter everything. I folded the note carefully, my resolve hardening. I wouldn't walk blindly into grief. Something about Marin, about that cryptic warning, demanded my attention first. And I knew with a sinking certainty that my life, and the safety of my children, would never feel the same again. Grief pressed down on me like a heavy blanket, suffocating yet relentless. Derek's absence left a void that nothing could fill, and each corner of our home seemed to echo with his laughter, now hauntingly silent. Amid the ache, small details began to prick at my mind. Calls Marin always excused herself from, messages she quickly deleted, vague excuses that never quite added up. Her concern felt rehearsed, a performance designed to calm me while hiding something deeper. I found myself questioning every interaction, every tone she used. Was her gentle hand on my shoulder comforting, or a calculated gesture meant to distract me? Doubt gnawed at me as I replayed moments that once seemed ordinary. Whispered conversations she ended abruptly, hurried glances when she thought I wasn't looking. The more I observed, the less certain I became of anything. Sitting with Ava and Jude, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy for them, I whispered to myself, why would she warn me? Or is this a trap? The words felt heavy, almost accusing, yet they reflected the storm of confusion swirling in my mind. I had always trusted Marin without question, but now every smile, every careful word seemed layered with intent. An unsettling tension built in the quiet of our living room, the air thick with suspicion. I wanted to believe she was simply grieving alongside me, but instinct told me otherwise. The shadows in her expressions hinted at secrets, at truths she wasn't ready to reveal. Even in her presence, I felt a growing distance, an invisible line she had drawn between us without explanation. That night, as the house settled into silence, I lay awake, replaying every interaction with Marin since Derek's death. Each avoided question, each carefully timed distraction, made my heart tighten further. Somewhere beneath her seemingly supportive exterior, something dark festered, a hidden motive I could feel but couldn't yet name. Betrayal was no longer a distant possibility. It was a whisper in the corners of my mind, waiting to take shape. I gripped the steering wheel, heart hammering as I made the choice the letter had forced upon me. Skipping Derek's funeral felt like a betrayal, yet an instinct deeper than grief urged me forward. I drove slowly through Marin's quiet neighborhood, careful to stay out of sight, parking several houses away so my presence wouldn't be noticed. From the shadows, I watched her home, every window a glimpse into a world that didn't match the sorrow I expected. Warm lights spilled onto the lawn, and through them I caught the sound of laughter, too bright, too carefree for the day Derek had died. Voices mingled in conversation that carried an intimacy far from mourning. My stomach churned. Something about the ease of it all made my chest tighten with unease. I clenched my hands in my lap, torn between the ache of missing Derek and the sharp pull of curiosity. Should I turn away and honor what was expected, or uncover the truth that gnawed at me like a persistent shadow? Each passing second intensified the inner conflict, the moral compass of a grieving widow wrestling with instinct. A flicker of fear surged through me as my thoughts drifted to Ava and Jude. What would it mean if they were left in Marin's care, exposed to whatever hidden games were unfolding behind those bright windows? The protective urge I had always carried for them now sharpened, mingling with anger I hadn't yet acknowledged. I stayed in the darkness, heart tightening with each sound, each careless laugh. Marin's world seemed to pulse with life, yet I couldn't shake the sense that beneath it, something dangerous waited. My grief tangled with unease, guilt shadowed by the drive to understand. I felt like a trespasser in a private universe, but the thought of leaving my children vulnerable made me stay rooted, silent, waiting for the next clue to reveal itself. Every flicker of movement behind the curtains, every careless gesture she made, sent a shiver down my spine. I realized with a sinking certainty that whatever was happening inside that house could shift everything I believed about my family and my life. I edged closer to the window, pressing my face against the cool glass, my pulse thrumming in my ears. Shadows moved inside, and then I saw them. Marin and a man I didn't recognize, close and careless, wrapped up in a private world that had no place in grief. My stomach lurched as I struggled to process what I was seeing. This wasn't sorrow. This was betrayal. A surge of disbelief swept through me, sharp and suffocating. My hands trembled, fingers gripping the edge of the windowsill as anger and hurt collided inside me. How could she, my own sister, behave like this while Derek lay gone, the weight of his absence pressing down on us? I wanted to scream, to storm inside and confront her, but reason and fear held me frozen. Then I noticed movement above, soft footsteps and muffled laughter. Ava and Jude were upstairs, oblivious to the deceit unraveling below them. My heart twisted tighter. They were innocent, vulnerable, and completely unaware of the corruption in the home they once trusted. The realization added a sting of urgency to my rising fury. I couldn't let this continue. I sank to the edge of the porch, pressing my palms to my face, letting tears blur my vision as thoughts raced. Every memory of Marin's warmth now felt like a lie, every comforting word a mask hiding manipulation. Revenge wasn't just a fleeting thought. It became a fire igniting in my chest, demanding action. I pictured her being exposed, accountable, stripped of the power she wielded so casually. I imagined protecting my children, reclaiming the safety they deserved, and ensuring Marin could never manipulate or harm them again. The anger and betrayal hardened into a resolve that felt almost tangible. Through the haze of hurt and shock, a plan began to form, careful and deliberate. I would not act recklessly, but I would act. Marin had crossed a line, and justice, in whatever form it took, had to follow. For Derek, for my children, for myself, I wouldn't let this betrayal go unanswered. I walked back into my house with a careful calm, forcing a measured expression over the storm of thoughts swirling inside me. Every movement, every word to Ava and Jude was calculated, rehearsed, as though I were performing a role. Inside, my mind replayed the events surrounding Derek's death, how he had insisted on driving home despite the storm, how a single misplaced call seemed to shift everything in those final hours. Questions I had pushed aside now screamed for attention. Pulling out my phone, I started sifting through old messages, receipts, and emails, looking for patterns I hadn't noticed before. A note from Marin, oddly timed and cryptic, hinted at her knowledge of Derek's financial dealings. A conversation she'd initiated about selling a joint property suddenly felt loaded with meaning. The threads were small, almost imperceptible, but each one suggested a connection I could no longer ignore. I forced myself to smile when Ava asked a simple question, masking the heat of growing anger beneath careful words. My chest burned with frustration as the realization solidified. Marin had a hand in more than just the deception I had seen. Her intentions were deliberate, weaving a network of manipulation and betrayal that had directly affected Derek. Sitting at the kitchen table, I began planning. Every encounter with her needed a purpose, every visit a chance to uncover more. I imagined the confrontation in my mind, the questions I would ask, the undeniable proof I would present. But first, I had to gather it without raising suspicion, without letting her sense the storm building just beneath my calm exterior. The house felt heavier with the weight of secrets, each room echoing with memories of what I had lost and what had been taken from me. My anger sharpened, tempered by patience and strategy. I couldn't afford mistakes. I needed clarity, confirmation, and leverage. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long shadows across the living room, I made a silent vow. When the time came, Maren would have no way to escape the truth. I would reclaim what was stolen, piece by piece, with precision and unshakable resolve. I sat in silence, the stack of papers in front of me shaking slightly in my hands. Each document, each receipt, each hidden note painted a picture I had been too afraid to accept. Maren had spun a web of lies, fabricating details about Derek's final days and hiding truths from everyone who trusted her. The weight of her deception pressed down on me, heavier than grief itself. Calls from relatives began pouring in, urging me to join the funeral, their voices a mix of concern and insistence. I nodded politely each time, offering vague excuses, careful not to reveal that I had uncovered the full extent of Maren's betrayal. The pressure tightened around me, but I refused. My refusal wasn't mere defiance. It was strategy, a shield to protect the truth until I decided how to wield it. Memories of my childhood flashed unbidden. Secrets shared with Maren, promises whispered in the dark, trust built over years that now felt like a lie. Anger surged, hot and sharp, mingling with sorrow, each emotion fueling the other. The sister I had confided in, the one I had loved unconditionally, was capable of manipulating those closest to me without hesitation. I began testing her subtly, planting little cues and observing her reactions. My tone was casual, my questions seemingly innocent, but each word was measured to draw her into revealing herself. I watched how she adjusted, how she tried to mask small slips, and it only confirmed my growing conviction. Maren believed she was untouchable, and I intended to exploit that. Beneath the surface of grief, a cold clarity settled in. I was no longer just mourning Derek. I was watching, learning, preparing. Pretending ignorance became a tool, a way to lull her into comfort while I quietly amassed the knowledge I needed. Every moment, every careful word, was a step toward confronting her with a truth so undeniable that even she could not escape it. My sorrow had sharpened into purpose, and my eyes, though filled with tears at times, saw clearly the path to justice I would follow. I knocked on the door with Ava and Jude clinging to my skirt, smiling through the ache as if nothing had changed. Maren opened with that practiced warmth, her face smoothing into sympathy the moment she saw us. She ushered us inside like a hostess welcoming guests, confident in a way that made my skin crawl. I kept my voice soft and steady, asked routine questions, let my children chatter while I took in every careless detail. A wine glass left warm on the coffee table, a jacket thrown over a chair, the faint scent of perfume that didn't belong to morning. She moved through the house assuming everything was under control, laughing too easily at the kids' jokes, offering platitudes about grief. Her ease felt like arrogance. I watched her small gestures, the way she checked mirrors, the quick deletions of text when she thought no one noticed, and cataloged them in my head. Each slip became a thread I could follow. I didn't confront her. Confrontation would ruin the advantage I needed. Instead, I arranged for accidents that looked natural. While Maren refilled our cups, I let Jude wander toward a bookshelf and discover a photograph casually placed so it would catch a visitor's eye. A snapshot showing Maren and Colin too close for comfort at a gathering no one besides family had attended. Ava, curious and bright, asked about the picture, prompting Maren to brush it off with a laugh. Her dismissive reaction was exactly the proof I wanted someone else to notice later. I subtly left a folded receipt peeking from under a cushion. A small, ordinary piece of paper with dates and names that pulled at the edges of the narrative I was weaving. When no one was looking, I slipped a voice message onto Derek's old tablet, labeled so it would be found by relatives sorting through his things. Nothing explicit, only enough to raise questions. Each small placement was deliberate. Each tiny breadcrumb aimed at inviting scrutiny from others without my hand showing. Beneath the careful movements, my conscience nagged. I pictured Maren as the sister I once trusted and then as the architect of so much of my pain. The conflict ate at me. Part of me recoiled from setting traps, from manipulating people I still loved to punish someone I had loved more. But the ache of betrayal hardened my choices into necessity. By the time we left, Marin was smiling, satisfied with her performance. I drove away with my children's laughter in my ears and a cold determination in my chest, knowing I had begun a plan that would force truth into the open, whatever the cost to my own heart. I closed the door behind us, the lock clicking into place, and turned to face Marin with a calm I didn't feel. My hands held a thick envelope, its contents heavy with truth. Documents detailing hidden bank transfers, Derek's secret will, and correspondence proving her intimate betrayal. I laid them on the table between us, sliding each piece forward slowly, deliberately. Her eyes widened, but she quickly masked it with a practiced smirk. "You don't understand," she began, her voice soft, attempting to twist the narrative. "This isn't what it looks like." Her words tried to reshape reality, to make me doubt what I knew, but I stood firm, refusing to let her manipulations take root. My chest tightened, anger burning hotter than ever, every memory of shared trust twisting into raw betrayal. Upstairs, Ava hummed a song and Jude's small footsteps padded across the floor. I could hear them playing, unaware of the tension thickening the air below. The thought of their innocence, their need to be shielded from Marin's influence, made my resolve sharpen. No excuses, no lies, no charm could allow her to continue endangering them emotionally. Marin's face shifted through panic, indignation, and finally frustration as the documents left no room for ambiguity. Her attempts at gaslighting grew desperate, her voice rising, but every rebuttal crumbled under the weight of facts. I felt the tide of control move entirely into my hands. I inhaled slowly, letting the fury simmer into cold calculation. The moment demanded clarity. Should I forgive and move on quietly, or dismantle the world she had built and make her face the consequences openly? My gaze flicked to the envelope again, imagining the reactions of anyone who would see the truth, the exposure that would prevent further harm to my children and others. Her pleas faltered as the inevitability settled over the room. I realized that protecting Ava and Jude meant more than sparing my own heartbreak. It meant dismantling her carefully constructed lies, ensuring the toxic influence she wielded over our lives could no longer exist. The betrayal had been laid bare, and with it came the power to reclaim control and justice, not only for myself but for the children who deserved a safe, honest world. Weeks passed as I quietly set my plan into motion, each move precise and deliberate. I shared carefully curated evidence with family members who had long trusted Marin, letting the facts speak without my direct involvement. Whispers spread naturally, questions were asked, and the careful facade Marin had maintained began to crumble. Her attempts to explain herself fell flat, leaving her isolated among those who once believed in her completely. Financial consequences followed. Accounts and decisions she had thought were secure were now under scrutiny, contracts reviewed and assets frozen. Marin's confidence faltered as the reality of exposure sank in. The same woman who had smiled so easily in my home was now floundering, forced to confront the damage she had caused. The weight of her actions pressed on her shoulders, and I sensed the first true pangs of guilt emerging where once there had been arrogance. At home I held Ava and Jude close, assuring them that our lives would be safe, that the chaos surrounding Derek's passing and Marin's betrayal would not define us. I guided them through routines and laughter, restoring a sense of normalcy and security they deserved. My grief, still present, had shifted into determination and clarity. I no longer felt helpless or shattered. I spent hours reflecting quietly, acknowledging the pain Marin had caused while recognizing the resilience it had sparked in me. Independence was no longer a distant hope. It was tangible, strengthened by the knowledge that I had protected my children and reclaimed control over our lives. Even as Marin retreated into solitude, shunned and mistrusted, I felt a calm certainty. She would carry the consequences of her choices. Damaged relationships, lost credibility, and the gnawing awareness that she had been unmasked. For me, though, the storm of betrayal had given way to clarity, and the sorrow I had carried transformed into a quiet but unshakable strength. I had faced deceit, exposed it, and emerged whole, ready to navigate the future with my children free from the shadow of her treachery. The morning air was crisp as I walked up the worn path to Derek's grave, Ava and Jude skipping ahead, their laughter light and unburdened. I knelt, tracing my fingers over the headstone, feeling the weight of months of sorrow, anger, and careful planning lift slightly with each quiet breath. The betrayal I had endured still lingered like a shadow, but so did the clarity of justice achieved. Watching my children play, safe and joyful, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. Life was moving forward, fragile but real, stitched together with resilience I hadn't realized I possessed. The ache of loss remained, a tender reminder of Derek's absence, yet it no longer consumed me entirely. Grief and empowerment mingled, and I allowed myself to feel both simultaneously. I reflected on the path that had brought us here. The lies unveiled, the truths restored, the toxic ties severed. I understood now that betrayal often emerges from those we trust most, and the only way to survive it is to stand firm, even when every instinct screams otherwise. Strength, I realized, was born not from vengeance alone but from protecting what truly mattered and refusing to be broken. As the sun cast warm light over the cemetery, I whispered a final thought to Derek, my voice steady, my heart resolute. I don't know if my husband ever knew what my sister had done, but now at least I do. The words felt like both a release and a promise. We were free to continue, scarred but unshaken, and I could finally allow the future to unfold without fear or manipulation. Do you think I did the right thing by confronting my sister and protecting my children, or should I have trusted her one last time? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your opinion.